Welcome into another edition of the Hang Time Podcast. Sekou Smith here in Atlanta, and John Schumann is busy crunching numbers as we get ready for the NBA trade deadline, 3 p.m. Eastern on Thursday, February 7th. So on today's show, we're going to take a break from the madness of the deadline to talk about a new film, High Flying Bird, which debuts on Netflix tomorrow, Friday, February 8th. You can check it out. It's an unbelievably interesting story. I got a chance to see it myself. The film tells the story of a fictional sports agent managing his rookie client during an NBA lockout, which I just so happened to have lived through myself in 2011, like a lot of other people who cover the league. It features interviews with a couple of familiar faces, Karl Anthony Towns, Donovan Mitchell, Reggie Jackson, talking about their welcome to the NBA moments, directed by Steven Soderbergh, and it stars Andre Holland, Zazie Betts, and Zachary Quinto, and it was written by Tarell Alvin McCraney, who joins us now on the phone. Tarell, first and foremost, thanks for joining us. Appreciate you taking the time. You and Barry Jenkins obviously got the Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay for Moonlight in 2016. So this is your first film since then. I'm wondering how you got involved with High Flying Bird and what's quote-unquote a sports movie, but not really, as we'll get into here shortly.
Thanks for having me on, and I hope the deadline doesn't cause too much mayhem in your life later on today. Andre Holland, who's also in Moonlight, but he and I have been collaborating for about 10 years now, and since 2006, and he wanted to at first create a picture or a film that talked about the Negro League and the integration of the professional baseball and how that essentially destroyed the Negro League. And he had that interest for a while. And then he had a conversation with Steven Soderbergh as they worked on a show called The Knick. And they just started talking about athletes and especially black athletes, what kind of agency they had or didn't have, how there was a rising statistic around that time that, 70 to 60% of players after the NBA, after 5 years, they fall into some kind of financial duress that basically is discussing the lockout of 2011, basically discussing things like Donald Sterling, more free agency moves, and just really wanted to talk about something that comes up in a book by Dr. Harry Edwards, called The Revolt of the Black Athlete, where it just talks about how, for a long time, black athletes in this country have had to use their agency for activism they had to use their position and platform to get access, and how there's a moment in time now where, moments of conflict can really look at and really be a way for these athletes to, perfect example, we can look at the players that Northwestern wanted to unionize, look at ways in which athletes are trying to make sure that they have agency. And so, Andre and I began talking about this idea and talking about how to put it into a context. And we came up with the script, and Steven wanted to be a part of it. And asked if, we thought he would be cool or good for him to shoot it. And so we did. So now it's out on Netflix on the 8th and a limited release in New York and LA on the same day.
The topic itself, I know a lot of people, when they think of a basketball movie, they're expecting, kind of what we've seen in the sports movie canon, I guess, over the years. And this is interesting in that it's a completely different look. I thought it was very unique the way you guys approached it. And as a playwright, and I know you're an accomplished playwright, I'm wondering how that experience of playwriting helps you flesh out a script like this and write a film like this, where there's so much dialogue and so much conversation back and forth about a topic that's really an action topic when you think about basketball.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what theater lends itself to. Theater is an auditory medium more so than film. Film is visual, as in the case of Moonlight, there's actually less dialogue in that than probably even the first 10 minutes of High Flying Bird. And I think in terms of what we wanted to explore was how a lot of jargon gets passed around and a lot of words get exchanged about basketball that we never hear. Those conversations that are kept, in the back rooms and or in the board meetings. What we sort of see, and as you well know, are the highlight reels when we see, incredible artists of the court doing their thing and gracing us with, magic and performance and the blood and sweat on the court. And then we never know the sort of backroom dealings that go on, or how how these very same athletes are being asked to shut up and dribble.
Yeah.
All we see is the amazing. We don't hear the conversations that are had about these young athletes. And so it was necessary for us to lean into the kind of political and economic jargon, financial jargon that can fly at a rookie or a person who is just being introduced to that world.
I'm curious, when you have such specific language as you mentioned, and that is throughout the film, how do you find the person that can open up that vault for you so you get it right? Is it a matter of canvassing a large group of people that can kind of cross-check what you're using, or do you go with one person's perspective, and use that as kind of a launching point for all those nuanced ways that those conversations happen in real life and then in turn in the film?
Well, I mean, you're hitting the nail on the head. It's important. It depends on the film. It depends on what you're doing. In this particular case, what was important to me, again, as a person who loved basketball all my life, never played it, and certainly never been good enough to be anywhere near anybody's professional team.
Right.
You want to talk to folk like yourself who've been in the game, who've gone through lockouts. And again, even the strategies that the agents come up with in this film come directly out of things that, other players have tried to do. And, other former players who are currently in lockout, players who turned into managers, ideas that they had, because I really wanted to canvas that reality rather than try to, make up something that was fictional and couldn't possibly happen. All the things that happen in this film, somebody's either almost done or is trying to do currently.
It's really, such a different twist. I think about historically some of the sports movies you watch, basketball movies in particular, and the focus, and I think about He Got Game is one that I've watched recently, just rewatched recently, and how unique some of those instances were in the film. And Rick Fox is a guy I've worked with since that movie. Ray Allen is somebody I've covered, but just how authentic the perspective must have been on that set to have those NBA players and high-profile guys as kind of sounding boards and resources. This would seem like a much more difficult thing for you as a writer, just trying to figure out the right stroke every time. And I'm wondering what that process for you is like in terms of your research for a film. How detailed do you have to be, and how long in terms of time does it take you to get to a comfortable point where you start writing something like this?
Well, again, I mean, there's so much information down in articles and books. And so the part of the platform about, just looking at what it takes for a lockout to happen is all right there. I think what became thrilling, or became, as you say, the thing that we know is a part of making the nuance happen is, if you see the film, you'll see that there's some people in it like Mr. Mitchell and others who can speak directly to the experience of being a first-time player and the experience that's going on. So for us, we want to always connect it back to what's happening in reality and make sure that folks can connect to it in that way. So, there are some folks who will see this and don't have your experience. Will be like, what's going on? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know that world. These players are paid crazy money, so they should be happy and fine with whatever they get. And the reality of that is that the majority of players don't make over a threshold of 1.5 or $2 million a contract. And even then, in that medium, the amount of taxation, amount of helping out their entire family, because most times, that person is the breadwinner for not just their immediate family, but their entire family. And what that means and what that financial burden can be, it's important to sort of look at all of the aspects of that. And again, there will be some folks who are like, yo, let's just go back to the court. I just want to see them folks play.
Right.
And those movies are great and magic, and I love those movies as well. I mean, I'm a sports movie fan. I've watched Creed about 17 times. So, so because we love an underdog, we love that story. But we wanted to talk about the another kind of underdog. Yeah. And we want to just make sure that voice was out there. I'm curious to know if there are any things in it that you found just like unbelievable. Did you feel like you just couldn't watch that part? You just like, no, that's not true.
No, it was interesting for me. I mean, I've read a lot of Harry Edwards' work, so I was, and I saw the NBA players in there, and I was really intrigued to see them there because you're right. They bring an authenticity that you wouldn't normally get in a film. Like I'm a big fan of Wall Street films, like about things I don't know that I'm not well versed in. So I watch those and I wonder how much of it is authentic and how much of it is Hollywood.
Right.
This didn't have a Hollywood feel to me. This had a grittier feel, and I don't know if it was the setting based in New York as opposed to being somewhere else or why, but it had an authentic feel definitely to me from the business side of basketball, and I liked that I didn't have to preoccupy myself with the dual track of the team or the player and his role on that team and what was going on the business side and with the lockout. It made it a little more convenient to watch and digest, I think, not having to worry about those two things working at the same time.
And I think, and there's some shows out there that get what you're talking about right. I mean, I think, and when I mention these because, they're out there for people to enjoy, but shows like Ballers get the kind of flashy, Hollywood side of what it can look like, as well as dealing with like the actual team itself. And I think they do that in a very succinct way in terms of sport. I think what we were after was something a little bit more, like you said, a little bit more gritty, but a little bit more, connected to that singular notion, because there are people who run this industry, right?
Yeah.
There are people who are benefiting from this industry and also not benefiting in certain ways. And we just wanted to make sure that we were adding to the many various ways in which you can look at the industry, not just, painting it one way. And so I think we hope to be in conversation with, I think we hope to be another way of looking at it. Like you said, an interesting perspective and refreshing. I hope that people see it and feel like, oh, wow, I didn't understand that, or I know a little bit more, and that's interesting. I'll keep track of that now as I go forward.
Yeah. I'm also very intrigued by this idea of Netflix and the doors it's opened for filmmaking. I was thinking about this after I watched High Flying Bird, and I will mention it again. We're talking to Tarell, Alvin McCraney, Oscar-winning screenwriter. I mean, I don't want to shortchange you whatsoever on the accolades and title.
I appreciate it.
But High Flying Bird, which is out on Netflix February 8th, and I was saying to myself, this is a film that might not have been possible in a previous generation based on the climate, in society. And then when I think about LeBron James and some of the current players in the NBA and the power they've kind of taken to tell their own stories and to kind of chart their own courses. Is this a film that, even though it's a look back at the 2011 lockout, this doesn't seem like something that gets made in that space? It has to be a retrospective almost to me to get made properly the way it does.
Well, again, I mean, we don't specify which time it is. And again, some of the notions that come up in the film are definitely of today. So we definitely are taking off of, some current sentiments that are going around the industry. But also, let's just, you can break down the very way the film was shot. The film was completely shot on a phone, on iPhones. And again, we couldn't have done that 10 years ago.
Right.
And now we do it and we tell people, and people are like, whoa, that's crazy. I didn't notice that until you just told me that.
Yeah.
And it speaks to something that is an ethos or a part of the film, which is that, technology going the way it's going, the age of information going the way it's going, that how younger and younger and even people who have less access or having access to information, have access to this kind of technology, the ability to democratize the way in which you tell your own stories is growing. So not just is LeBron James able to produce his own content and tell his own stories, but also the player who makes, almost 90% less than LeBron James can do that. And also the kid who wishes to be LeBron James can take a camera out and film his day to day and send that into Sundance and say, hey, I shot a documentary about what it is to play ball, play the court in my hood, and be recognized for that. And, where Barry Jenkins and I are from, Liberty City, we are home to one of the largest populations or places where NFL players come from.
Right.
The players that go into college and go into NFL, to the NFL. And that little speck of property right there, you've got a show on, I believe it's on Showtime, called Liberty City Warriors, where it's, again, talking about just the rise of these young folk and what it means to try to, be the next person to go on to NFL glory from that neighborhood, and how that story isn't just one of like, oh, I got to the NFL and now I made it. It's a story of loss. It's a story about, most of those kids have lost someone or losing someone. They're one of their best players was killed as a little kid. They dedicated a game to him. And those stories, the ability to see what players come up through in order to get to that place are becoming easier to access because people can document them and tell their own stories. So, it's an exciting time. It's an exciting time. We got to be vigilant to make sure that, not one story is the only story.
Sure.
We want to make sure that there are many stories, and I think Netflix is a part of that as well.
When you heard that Steven Soderbergh suggested that the whole entire film be shot on an iPhone, did that surprise you at all? Or in this day and age of movie making and the entire filmmaking process, was that something that didn't sound foreign to you? Because at my age, and I have teenage kids who do everything on their phone, so I shouldn't be surprised. They literally stay in them 24/7. Was that something that seemed odd to you?
No, again, it didn't seem odd because how did we get Issa Rae? How did we get Insecure? By watching YouTube clips that she had, put together of another piece called Awkward Black Girl. Content is made in so many ways now, and some of the film talks about this, but content is out there, is accessible in ways that they just weren't. And so for him to be thinking, hey, we need to make this content fast, we need to make this content succinct and done beautifully, we also need to do it independently. Because if we, again, speaking to your point earlier, and if I'm misquoting you, please tell me, but the atmosphere of making this film or a film like this 10 years ago was not really possible, not just because of the technology, but because of the ability, because of sentiment and people wanting to finance it. Well, Steven was like, you know what, we can finance this ourselves, or he can finance this himself, especially if we film it on this thing that has the ability to shoot like a camera 10 years ago, a film camera did 10 years ago. We can still make the same quality of film and not have to worry about a studio saying, hey, don't talk about that part, or don't tell that part of the story, or don't investigate that. And that again is giving folks access and ways to come to the table.
Yeah, that's a great point. Given the diversity of personalities and people who were involved in this project, what kind of back and forth do you have with a Harry Edwards or with a Donovan Mitchell or someone else who might be a part of it in whatever way, and how they respond to the words that you've written? And is there a back and forth about what they view those words to be and mean, and what your intent was? I'm just curious about that process, how a screenwriter would work with the people who are bringing those words to life.
Yeah, well, my producers, Andre Holland and Steven Soderbergh, were very much already attracted to what Dr. Edwards had done. Mm-hmm. And I was late to the game. And so, when you're late to the party, last thing you do is control the song. You know what I mean? When you're the last person in the car, but you're the last, you cannot be the one who's controlling what music is being played. So for me, it was easy to say, hey, here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I'm coming up with based on the conversations you all have had. Inform me of where I'm off. Inform me of what doesn't sound right or doesn't feel good. And Dr. Edwards would give notes to Andre and write some notes down and just talk about things. And I would, fix them as best I can. Again, but to me, that was a smooth process. The hard part about it was time. Everybody's, Andre was doing 7 different projects at the same time. Steven's filming at least 3 films at the same time. I was doing, I'm still doing about 4 or 5 different projects. And so the hard part was, making sure we came back and took the time to listen and say, okay, cool, we got to fix this. And here's how we nuance this part of the storytelling, and make sure that we have all the voices that are a part of this, and including the women who are actively a part of the industry, how they fit in and where they fit in.
Yeah, there was a fantastic, like I mentioned, diversity to the cast. I thought about Bill Duke, who I've been watching in movies forever, and then Andre Holland, who I've just discovered recently, and kind of that play back and forth between their characters. It just reminded me how much everything evolves and changes in terms of the narratives that you have in film. And I'm a closet film buff, like a lot of people. I watch a ton of movies. I watch all my, Netflix and all that, but I'm not technically versed in it the way you are and the folks who make movies are. So it's always interesting to me to find out kind of how you make that process work for you guys on that side of it. It's fascinating to me. I have to wrap my head around somebody not only creating an authentic, original story and then telling it in the ways that they can be told. Now it's a lot to put into a box. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about films like High Flying Bird and others, that amount and diversity of things that are available to us now as sports fans and as movie buffs, and then as people from a particular culture. You mentioned, Liberty City, where you're from, and I know people who are from there, and it's football country. If you and Barry Jenkins had decided to make a movie about Pee Wee football, I know all kinds of people who would have immediately tapped in to where you guys are from and what it means culturally and kind of how it resonates. This film has some of that to me for people all over the country who are from places where basketball culture is thick and really has a kind of a stronghold in some communities.
For sure. And I think, and thank you for saying that. I mean, I think it's really interesting to me because, again, we can hear just one narrative about a community or about a people, and then now we can hear so many varying stories about that community. And I think it just really is thrilling. It's also great to see that there are athletes who can continuously engage in the art form and are interested in it. I mean, you mentioned before LeBron James has a production company, and I think many other athletes and artists. Athletes are crossing over and figuring out how to make sure that their artistry is engaged. And that's important, because one, as I can tell you as a former dancer, your body can't continue to do the things that you wanted to in terms of how hard it is to maintain athleticism in these professions, in these strands.
Sure. And
so you want to make sure that you're still expressing yourself and having the ability to do so. And so that's why it's so important that in Liberty City, where I'm from, it may be football country, but it's also, there are, 5 or 6 extremely versed dancers who have come out into the world and are running, Alvin Ailey, for example. Robert Battles from Liberty City. He's the head of Alvin Ailey.
Wow.
Barry Jenkins is from Liberty City, and he, runs his own production, his own film company.
Right.
So those two things together can really begin to express what a community is all about.
No doubt about it. And I want to make sure we let everybody know to check this out on Netflix Friday, February 8th. High Flying Bird is a very interesting watch and something that I'm sure you enjoy. Tarell, Alvin, McCraney joining us here on the Hang Time Podcast. I know it got the thumbs up with my wife, who is not a sports fan or basketball fan whatsoever. When I told her, I was like, hey, I said, we got to do some homework. I said, I got to watch this film.
So you want her with charm.
Yeah, exactly. I told her, I said, we got to watch this film. And she's like, what's it about? And I said, well, it's about basketball, but don't worry. It's not a bunch of, guys running down the court playing basketball. It's actually got some more to it. And she was like, oh, yeah, let's watch it. So I said, I think y'all have nailed it from the outset because you're going to capture the imaginations of people who don't just want to watch somebody shoot buckets.
Hey, well, we're happy to make sure that your date night is fulfilling. And we're glad we can aid you in that. And so, yeah, we appreciate it. And make sure that, some other folks who need a nice date night, go see it on the 8th. If they're in New York and LA, we've got a limited run starting on the 8th as well.
That's awesome, man. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you. High Flying Bird debuts Friday, February 8th on Netflix. Thank you, Tarell. Appreciate you.
Thanks so much, sir. Take care.
All right, man.
Bye-bye.
I'm mad that John Schumann wasn't around to get a chance to talk about this because Shu is a numbers cruncher. He's an analytics guy. He would have enjoyed a lot of the back and forth on this film. We'll be back on Monday with another episode of the Hang Time Podcast, and Shu will be back with his NBA.com power rankings. Be sure to subscribe to Hang Time on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts for new episodes all season long. Don't forget to leave a review, and we appreciate you. We'll see you next time right here on the Hang Time Podcast. Time Podcast.